Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. I'm Angela, and here on this nice sunny day in Calgary, I am sitting on Zoom with a person who has done so much in his lifetime and has helped so many people. And I'm so excited to talk to John Dedakis. And he is a novelist, he is a writing coach, he is a former editor on CNN's The Situation Room with Wolf Blitzer. During John's 45-year career in journalism, he was a White House correspondent during Ronald Reagan's presidency, and he is the author of 6 award-winning mystery suspense thriller novels. Plus, he's a manuscript editor and motivational speaker, and he inspires people who are struggling with grief to use mindful writing as a way to heal. Grief and loss undergirds all 6 of his novels, which are derived from his sister's suicide and his son's fatal heroin overdose. And today, as an author and an editor and a writing coach, John not only entertains with his thrillers, but also inspires others to use writing as a path to healing. And his message is one of hope and inspiration for us all. And so that is why he's on this podcast, because he is bringing what we love. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Angela. It's good to be here.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit more about your story. I mean, I'm curious about how you were an editor, and how does this all fit in as far as a timeline? You've had some grief, you've had some loss, and you were also into the writing, obviously, in so many ways. Tell us how that all fits together.
At first, it didn't fit at all. It was just
Yeah.
kind of a jumble of, emotions and trying to figure things out. But I mean, it goes all the way back to when I was 9 years old, and I witnessed a car train collision that killed 3 people, and
Mm,
that was, very traumatic. And a kid my age was killed in the crash, and
wow.
so, you come face to face with your mortality at a young age. And I think growing up just in general is kind of confusing and vexing. And so for the longest time, I was kind of struggling and stumbling along trying to find my way. I was going to go into law. My dad was a lawyer, and we were going to go into practice together. Um, I went into journalism instead. I was going to go into politics, but for any number of reasons, I went in a different direction. And journalism, I mean, this was during the Vietnam War. There was just a lot of confusion
Mm,
about, the U.S. was very divided back then, even more so than it is now.
wow.
And, there were riots on college campuses. And so journalism just seemed to be the good perch to sit on to try to figure out what the facts were. And so I went into journalism. And so things were, humming along okay, I think. But I began to start to play with writing fiction when I was at CNN. I'd been, as you mentioned, a reporter, a White House correspondent. But at CNN, I was a writer, and within a year, they made me an editor, which was tedious. It was fault
Mm,
finding. And I was working a terrible shift. It was, overnights, and I just needed a creative outlet. And that's when I started playing with fiction. And when I started doing that, I'm looking back now at, 20, 30 years ago, and I can look back now and see with more clarity than I did at the time. What I was doing is I was drawing from personal experience. And so my first novel deals with that car train collision that I witnessed. I fictionalized it. And I also brought into it my sister's suicide that you mentioned. I was on the scene that day. And so, one of the things I teach my writing students is write what you know. And so I was just, that first chapter is just ripped from reality. And it isn't until I'm 20 years into the process that I look back and I go, oh, that's what I was doing. I was working through my grief.
Yeah.
And during that time, my son went missing and then was found dead in my car of an accidental heroin overdose. I
Oh,
went through grief counseling, and so during that time, I was also writing about his experience, but I was pouring it into the life of my protagonist. So, I'm a slow learner, and it took me a while to realize that was what was going on.
yeah. So it was happening, well, organically, naturally, right? You
Yeah,
were
I
finding a
think
way.
that's it. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's how I stumbled on it too, was I just started to journal out of the
Right.
blue. And
Yeah. You
I
hadn't
just
been journaling up until that point?
no. And when he got sick, it just this some I ended up with a journal, I guess is what happened. And then I just started doing it. And then I didn't stop because it was helping. It was,
And this is when your husband this was while your husband was still
yes, when
battling
he was
cancer?
sick.
And what effect did it have? How did it help you?
Well, the journal, the way it was set up was so unique because it actually had me not only writing about the day, but it was helping me think about things I could be grateful for and things that I was doing for others that would be kind. And so it was making me every day go back to what am I grateful for and what have I done that's been kind. And and so even during the day then my mind was searching for things, right? With and so it really just forced me to think about things in a different way.
Interesting. Yeah. And you've stuck with it since?
Yes, I still journal, not every day anymore. I was doing it probably for about 3.5 years. I journaled every single day and I didn't miss. And I had several journals on the go.
You're
But
sure. And
yeah,
would you say that it was, I don't know, cathartic, therapeutic,
yes,
both?
yes,
Both?
yes, both. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's an amazing experience. So what you do really interests me because I think that there's really a key to releasing through writing.
Yeah, it's tapping, I think you probably discovered this too. You're aware of what's going on around you, but you're also tapping into your subconscious.
Yeah.
And I found in journaling, and maybe you have too, that you're bypassing your critical editor. It's just coming on, it's like taking a sip out of your subconscious and it comes through your fingers and onto the page or onto the screen.
Yeah.
And there's a certain, it's unfiltered, and I think that's where the healing can come from because you're not looking at it critically, you're just letting it out.
Yeah. And I think that's where, I felt safe to be able to just write this stuff. I knew nobody else was going to read it.
Exactly.
And I could write whatever I wanted. I think some people get hung up because they think, they have to do it properly. I mean, you can't write without doing it properly. If you went to school, everybody told you that you had to make sure you had capital letters and periods and all that
Right.
stuff, right?
Right. Right.
And I felt like, this was just an opportunity for me to just write anything.
Was that a surprise for you that that actually turned into a way of healing?
Yes, because I didn't realize the magnitude
What
of
do you
what,
mean?
well, just not only that it helped me, I mean, get those emotions out, but it seemed like once I got it on the page, it almost released in some way. It was like getting it out there made it not so big and scary or confusing, chaotic.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense.
yeah. It's been the best tool, I would say, for me
Uh-huh.
through the whole process. Yeah.
Yeah,
And it's
and
still the
I
go-to.
journal. Yeah, I still journal. I was journaling at the time, although the interesting thing is that I've been journaling since I was little. But when Stephen went missing, I mean, my journal probably during those critical, months, from when he went missing to when, we found him and the weeks afterwards, I wasn't journaling that much. It's kind of interesting how I put it aside
Mm,
and then picked it up and gradually got back into it as opposed to journaling in the moment. Just kind
right.
of everybody's different.
Yeah. Yeah, and it seems like when I'm having a tough time, that is when I really go to the journal. Like I really start writing then.
Yeah.
'Cause-
Thinking onto the page.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, because it seems like in my thoughts, in my mind, it's not organized somehow. It's just a bunch of thoughts. And once I get them onto the paper, it's almost like I can see them for what they are, which is just thoughts, but maybe they lead me in a certain direction at some point.
There,
And
there was a student I had who took my class in memoir writing, and he kept a journal when his wife died, and she was sick and died. And he told me that, a couple of years later, he revisited the journal when he was writing the memoir, and he said, I'd forgotten how mad I was, how angry I was.
yeah,
Because when you get it onto the page, that's the catharsis. But the value is that it's still there on the page so that you can go back and realize, where you were versus where you are now.
yes, yes, it's super valuable for that. And I mean, that's really how I wrote my book, was I went back, I went through the journals, I went through all the writing, the blogs, and then I just organized it into a book. And that felt good. It felt good. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you started a podcast.
Yeah.
Who knew?
I know. And we talk about this often on the podcast about how you end up kind of recreating your life because the old life isn't anymore. It's like creating a new identity all over again. And so this is not something I thought I would ever be doing, but absolutely it has a lot to do with my late husband's willingness to meet with people that he didn't know and learn their stories, and he loved that. And so I'm kind of living that now, um, and it's strange because I that wasn't me.
Was
So,
it was it a little scary to get out in this on this
oh, it was
world?
terrifying.
Was it really?
Yeah, but
Fear is a part of grief.
yeah, and it's like after you've had a major loss like that, things don't seem so scary anymore. It's like if
This is
you
true.
can overcome that, well, then there's a lot of other things that don't seem nearly as scary.
That's exactly it. I would say it in exactly the same way and have.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So through your novels, I find this fascinating. So you've taken real life circumstances and you've put them into, a fantasy novel. How does that work? Like, how do you get your mind? Because I don't know how I would do that.
Well, and just to be clear, these aren't fantasy. Fantasy is actually a genre. So,
Okay.
so
Story. Yes.
I write political thrillers and mysteries and
Right.
suspense and
Right.
all that.
Right.
But the process is pretty much the same.
Hmm.
I like to at least semi-plot them out. I like to have an idea of where I'm going, but I discover in the writing process that I'm never as thorough a plotter as I thought I would be. And so usually about halfway through the process, I'm ending up, winging it, sort of
Okay.
by the seat of my pants. There was one novel, I think my fifth book, it's called Fake. And my protagonist, I write as a woman, which is a whole different interview, I suppose.
Oh, wow.
But my protagonist is she's White House correspondent for the Associated Press, and she is the victim of fake news. We, the reader, know that what's being said about her that's national news is not true, but we're living life through her. And so
Okay.
I wanted to show that lies have consequences. And so as I was writing this book, there came a point where I was stuck. And the way I got unstuck is I put in all capital letters in the manuscript, Russia does something provocative here. And I just plopped that in and then moved on. And as I was writing, I figured out, oh, Russia could do this, but I kept on going. And then when I did the rewrite, I went back and then filled in what Russia did. So,
Wow.
how do I do it? It's organic and
Yeah.
it's spooky and it's amazing that it happens. But there's a lot of creativity I think we all have that we don't know we have until we're able
Yeah.
to tap into it.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think the mind really does get in the way. I'm living proof of that.
Well, we all are. I think we're all.
Yeah. Yeah, because, when you think, oh, well, how could that ever, how could you ever do that? That was my thought. Like, how could you ever do that? How could you? I don't know how I could be creative enough to write a story that's not true because mine is a memoir, right?
But that's the thing. But you're drawing from personal experience, and I
Yeah.
and what you've just articulated is something I hear over and over again. I'm
Mm,
not creative, and yet
right.
a lot of people have ideas for stories, have a desire to write, and it's just that they don't really know how to tap into that, and that's one of
Right.
the things I try to teach.
Yeah, that's so cool. So you work with people. Do you run workshops or do you do one-on-one things? What do you do?
All of the above.
Okay.
And that just it grew over time. When I first started writing fiction, I just wanted to get a book published. I didn't know what my genre was. I didn't have a clue how to do it. And then gradually I would go to writers' conferences, I would read books on it, I would have people read my stuff and give me feedback. And so eventually I got to a point where I was able to start, pitching agents and ended up getting published. So once I got published, I would go to writers' conferences to sell my books. And people, because for some reason they thought that I knew what I was doing, one guy came up to me and he said, "This is my 150,000 word tome. Give it a quick read and tell me what you think." Well, there's no
Whoa.
such thing with me as a quick read, and it needs work isn't really going to be that helpful. So I monetized it, and I basically became a freelance editor, a manuscript editor, a writing coach, because I'd made so many mistakes over the 10 years it took to get my agent and get published that I learned a lot in the process. And so I've been able to help people deconstruct what's going on and give them guidance on how to make it better, whether it's in a online workshop, a workshop at a writer's conference, or a one-on-one session.
Okay. Yeah. And I know how important that editing is to a book. Um, just going through the process myself, I just couldn't imagine what an editor did until I was in it.
Well, you get so close to your own project that you don't
Yes.
see it anymore in an objective way. And that's when you need to and you don't necessarily need to hire a professional right away. I mean, beta readers, people who are already within your life, can be great sources of feedback if
Right.
you give them permission to tell you what's not working.
Right.
That's invaluable feedback.
Yeah, for sure. So when you were working with the White House and as this journalist, what do you think from that life helped you now with what you do?
Well, not only the experiences, which, help inform what I write, but I'd say probably the most important takeaway from that experience was that journalism writing is meant to be clear. It's not flowery, it's just straight ahead. And one of the reasons that it's so such efficient writing is that you only have in broadcasting a certain amount of time. And in print, you only have so much real estate. And so you need to be efficient. You have to get the facts down quickly and efficiently and clearly. And so that just transferred over to writing a novel. You may be writing an 80,000 word book, but each sentence needs to be clear and concise.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I can see that. And see, when I write, and I don't know how your process is, but when I write, I just write. And then when I go back, it's like refining and
Right.
shortening and taking things out that are extraneous. Is it?
Exactly, because the first draft that you're describing is what they call the discovery draft. That's just, in a sense, vomiting onto the page. And then you go back and, do some cleanup on aisle five.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So here's something that just came to me. What are your thoughts on AI?
Oh, excellent question. I have a lot of thoughts on AI and a lot of questions too.
Mm,
And I've been investigating it and I've been experimenting with it. And I've got a lot of feelings and thoughts and insights that I'll try to do this efficiently to
okay.
kind of to cover the ground. It's here to stay.
Mm,
We're not going to be able to get rid of it. It's then and it's morally neutral. I mean, it's just there, and it's a matter of what we do with it. And there are people doing things with it that are way beyond, us and our control. It's just, there are going to be bad actors. There are going to be people who are going to use it selfishly or in an evil way or whatever, to create deep fakes, for instance, that will try to manipulate, the electorate. That's way beyond our control, and that means we just need to be more discerning and aware that this kind of stuff is going on. So there's that. When I first started writing fiction, I was doing short stories because I figured, well, that's manageable, and then if I can get those published, then I'll give myself permission to write a novel. I wasn't able to get them published. It's hard to write short stories. So I
mm,
just jumped to novel writing. So 20 years later, a friend of mine asked me to write a short story, an original short story for a reading. And I didn't know what I was doing. And so I went to AI. And by this time, I was teaching writing classes and AI questions were coming up. And so I decided, all right, I'm going to do a little experiment. And so I went to ChatGPT and I typed in the parameters. I want to write a short story that's 5,000 words. It's in this style. This is the title. These are the things that I want to happen. Write it. And bam, in an instant, in a nanosecond, it wrote it and
mm,
it sucked. It sucked. It was terrible. I knew instinctively that I could do better. And so
mm.
I did. And that cured me of the temptation to use AI as a writing tool
Yeah.
because and the more people I've talked to and the more experts I've listened to, the more I realize that AI can be great at regurgitating everything that's on the internet. You can get answers to all kinds of stuff. Not always accurate answers, but answers. It can organize stuff. It can give you a summary of what your book is about or help you write your dust covered blurb or whatever, but it doesn't know you. It doesn't have the intimate experiences that you've had that you can draw from to make the story unique in a way that AI can't. So, from a creative standpoint, it doesn't have the soul that you need to bring authenticity to your stories. And so I think that's one of the things that, it's useful, but I don't recommend it as a writing tool. Does that
Yeah.
help?
Yes, absolutely. I completely
Any
agree.
follow-up questions? I covered a lot of ground there.
No, I was just thinking about that. Actually, we were talking about it yesterday because I was writing a newspaper article. I write a monthly column, and I was kind of on the wire and trying to figure out, I had an idea and I just didn't know how to bring it forth. And I did get some ideas from AI, but I think it loses your voice.
Yeah,
There's something about the way you talk, the way you say things that
that's
has, I think
exactly
that's what you're
right.
talking about, that soul, right?
Yep,
In the writing, and it misses that. And so, yeah, I had to, sure, I got some ideas, maybe the same as what I would have gotten if I had Googled, but
right.
it doesn't help write it.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think we all kind of have to come to that realization ourselves. But I think that you made the wise choice.
Yeah.
You can lean on it and it can give you some guidance, but in the end, you got to do the writing. And that's the fun part. That's actually the fun part.
It is. It is. And that's the part that really feels healing to me. is that writing and that feeling when you're finished it and it feels good. That's what I wanted to say, right?
Whoa, that's great. Yeah, that's when you know you're doing it authentically and organically, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So you do workshops. Where can people find you if they want to some help? And I know you help people specifically with grief and writing. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things I'm trying to do is, I mean, a lot of my work over the last 20 years has been helping writers or wannabe authors, craft their stories and navigate the whole publishing system, and make their writing better. But what I've been doing lately is I'm expanding to take my motivational speaking and workshopping to corporations that have wellness programs, veterans groups that are dealing with vets that have PTSD, grief organizations, hospices, hospitals, helping people who are struggling with grief to find to use writing as a way to heal. So I'm actually expanding beyond the writing community now.
Wow.
But if anybody wants to get a hold of me, the best way to do that is through my website, which not only has, explanations and thumbnails about my books, but it talks about my speaking business. I'm being interviewed on podcasts like this one. Any number of ways things that I'm doing, you can get through to me there, and that's johndedakis.com. It's one of those tricky Greek names. It's John, D as in dog, D as in dog, KIS as in Sam, johndedakis.com.
Yeah. Amazing. And so people can go there, find out what you're doing,
Yep.
maybe catch up with you somewhere along the way.
Yep.
And do you have some advice or wisdom for my audience that you'd like to share before we wrap up?
Well, let's see. We've been talking about grief, and I would imagine that a lot of your followers are struggling with that. They're in the
Mhm.
middle of it,
Yeah.
and boy, it's hard to really give some advice that's sort of one size fits all. Um, let me try a couple of things. First
Sure.
is just take a breath, and then take another one, and be comfortable in the moment because it's so easy to regret the past and fear the future and be ineffective in the moment. And if you learn to cultivate the moment, I think that can be the very first step toward cultivating peace in your life. Um, and sure, life is coming at you. There are a lot of responsibilities, but just keep cultivating the moment, so that you can, because that's the only thing you can control is the moment. And then, as you are getting comfortable in the moment, where you find that peace, try to get a sense of what the next step is, because you don't have to look much farther than the next step. And if writing is on the horizon, if there is something that you feel like you want to get out, do it. Write. Don't try to be writerly or fancy. Just get whatever it is down on the page, whether it's just your own personal story, or maybe there's an idea for a story, a fiction story, a novel that you're thinking of. Just start to write. And then one other thing, and then I'll stop. If you are actually getting beyond your comfort zone and writing a novel, which you've maybe never done before, probably the next step is to get better at your craft. Find out what it takes to be a good novelist. There are books on the subject. Probably the best place to go is writersdigest.com. It's a great place to go for all kinds of resources along the writing for the writer's journey, including and up to how to market yourself and how to get an agent. So I think those three things will be a great place to start.
Wow, that's amazing. And I love how you bring up staying in the moment because I think that is a major key. because we do say, when you're thinking about past and you're trying to relive the past that you can't relive, it creates
Can't change it.
depression.
You can't
Yeah.
change it. You can't change it.
No, you can't. And thinking about the future sometimes gives people a lot of anxiety because you have no idea what's happening coming.
Right.
Right?
Right.
It's none
Right.
of us do. But that moment is where life is. And so I think that's so important. So
Yeah.
thank you for bringing that up. I think
Sure. And
that's
thanks for the opportunity. I mean, we're all in this together and we're all just trying to figure it out.
yeah.
It's sort of like we're one beggar helping another beggar find some bread, you know?
Yeah. Absolutely. And we're all in it together. And so thank you so much for sharing everything that you've shared today and for being here and for offering what you offer. I think it's amazing that you've got this talent and you're using it to help people in grief. And I think it's a beautiful thing. So thank you so
Well,
much.
well, I mean, you're welcome and thank you for the opportunity and more power to you. This sounds like you've got a good thing going here.
Yeah, well, I love it. So thanks again. And thanks everyone for listening. And bye for now.